Look, in this episode, as you all know, we'll be discussing the SolarWinds incident and what it means for your business specifically. As many of you know, I'm Richard Ritchie. Today, I'm excited to be joined by world-renowned cybersecurity expert and ethical hacker, Bryan Seely. Say hello, Brian.
Hi.
Whenever I've seen you on a few talk shows, interviews, whatever, whenever someone mentions your past, you always look quite squeamish and embarrassed.
No, it's always just funny to hear. Like, every time I hear it, my first reaction is like, oh, that's so stupid. Why'd he do that? Like, well, that's me. Oh, I'm an idiot.
Well, this was obviously quite a few years ago. I mean, your reputation skyrocketed back in 2014 when you became the only person to wiretap the United States Secret Service and FBI, which is very brave, I have to say. But obviously, look, I'm sure a lot's happened to you since then. So why don't you just bring us up to speed with what Bryan Seely does these days? Because you're obviously still in the industry. So tell us a bit about yourself, Brian.
Oh, it's been a lot of stuff since then. I gave a TED Talk and wrote a book, and that launched a public speaking career and consulting. I was an advisor for John McAfee for a while. I consulted for Mark Cuban for a bit after a LinkedIn exploit, and I found his private email. There's a whole bunch of different things. Now I work for a company called Sciemptive Technologies. We're a security hardware and software manufacturing company, new startup that I'm actually really excited to work for. I begged to go work for them when they were a vendor for another company I worked for. I also have a private security consulting practice doing pen testing, sometimes for celebrity clients like privacy, helping people get off the grid and reduce their digital footprint, whether it's phone numbers or address, car registrations, that kind of stuff. So yeah, risk assessments, hardening, pen testing, trying to make sure hackers can't break in by me and my team breaking into your stuff to show you what the problems are and helping you come up with a better solution so that you're not a target.
So is that the approach you typically take? So before, I guess, taking on the job, the role is to hack into the system, to expose vulnerabilities, and based on that, you then design a strategy to improve, I guess.
Yeah, it would be the equivalent of walking around your house and going, all right, you left that door unlocked, that window unlocked. You leave the house between 9 and 5, and these windows are unlocked. That's how I would get in. I would recommend locking those doors or putting up a fence. And that's also included. There's also like physical security considerations for lots of companies and people. So I've done bodyguarding in the past. I was in the Marine Corps, which that's the logo of U.S. Marines. I think that's one of the reasons I didn't go to jail. So.
Well, because you were a Marine, because you were.
Well, I had a top secret clearance at one point with a sensitive compartmentalized information, like a really high level clearance because of my job in the Marines. And I think because I was on their radar already, and no one's that stupid, they were just like, all right, nah.
Yeah, he's one of us. He's got it. He's helping us. He surely can't be serious.
Right.
Awesome. So let's jump into the topic of the day. Obviously, the SolarWinds incident. First question, this actually comes from one of our listeners, James. Hack or attack? These words seem to be used interchangeably. Is there a difference?
Not really. Hacking implies, if you're going to use it in that term as a offensive criminal action, something that's illegal, because in the United States, it's illegal to access a computer that you do not have permission to use the credentials to log in, to gain access. That's illegal. That's usually the number one thing that gets prosecuted. So hack or attack, it's the same thing. You should consider it a hostile action.
Okay, and that's the key thing, right? Hostile. Okay, so let's move it forward one step further. Specifically now related to SolarWinds, so supply chain attack. Now, just to be clear, we're not talking about stealing the wheels off delivery trucks, are we?
No. That's the first thing I thought was Amazon warehouses or some heist. Not related to logistics, not related to actual trucking businesses or shipping It could happen to them, but the supply chain attack is mainly your business has dependencies, things that it relies on to produce a product. Whether your product is a service or it's an actual object, you have to buy things, you have to use software, you have to rent space, you have to use electricity. And if you look at it from like a spying capability, could someone deliver a package to you that has a listening device in it? That is kind of the idea. So is the software you're using or dependent on the Microsoft software, has that been tampered with? That's a supply chain attack. Your vendors, different things like that.
Okay, so
an example would be like Target. The Target breach back in, what, 2014?
Okay.
Malware infected all of the different point of sale terminals. The way the malware got in was through a vendor of Target's, an HVAC contractor that had less security, and gaining access to them allowed them to get into Target and then spread the malware, and they didn't catch it. So it was one of the things they were dependent on. So one of the vendors is how they broke in.
Yeah, it's the idea of supply chain attack interests me because I think it's more to do with the reason why it interests me is it's trying to identify the almost where the responsibility lies for identifying the problem, right? Because as you said, if you get a package delivered at the door, I'll check the box before I open it. Perhaps that would be my involved. But if I open up an Apple device, the assumption is the Apple device or whatever device I've ordered is risk-free because Apple would have performed their checks on that device before shipping it to me.
Yeah, and I could open up an Apple device and I'd be bollocksed to be able to go and figure out which one's been tampered with. Are you kidding? Like, as far as I'm concerned, it's magic. I would not be able to reproduce an Apple iPhone in any reasonable amount of time. How many lifetimes I would need to be able to build one? So that's really sophisticated hardware supply chain attack.
Yeah.
A software supply chain attack could be a bogus app on an app store, like an Android app store, or an unsanctioned app. Apple doesn't have that option because everything goes through the app store. You can turn off the security features on an Android and download an app from a different store that's less secure but has more stuff, and that app could be a dependency your business uses, and it could also be sending data to China, Russia, the moon, whatever. And that's how that could be a supply chain attack.
Okay, that's super interesting because, like you said, it's so where does the responsibility lie then? If so, for example, so with the SolarWinds attack again, so please correct me if any of this is incorrect. So hackers installed malware code in SolarWinds software, so Orion, for example, that they then installed on client sites. And then when SolarWinds installed the software update, that effectively activated the malware, which began the hack. Is that right?
I think there's a few different pieces. There was a backdoor component, one was a delayed timer. There's a few different things, but essentially the SolarWinds, the way you deploy it, gives it access to everything on your network, and with corrupted updates or things like that, you can have the malware get spread across this very, very large network that SolarWinds has exclusive access to because it needs to monitor your network. It's simple. It's putting poison in the water supply. Everyone gets it. And you're sitting there, who's responsible? Well, you brought in the Trojan horse. You were asked by your boss to look at the horse and say, does it look fishy? And you're like, wow, it's a horse. Let's get it in here. And I don't want to, I want to go on break, and you didn't do your job. But it's a little bit of the person who didn't just say, no, we're not allowing it. No horses today. We don't, or no badgers, no nothing. And then the guy who didn't inspect it, and then now it's everyone's problem. Does it really matter who's in the cleanup aspect? Now, if you haven't been breached at this point, assume that you will be, and if you have a new vendor or a new business relationship with somebody who provides software, service, strict guidelines for how to manage that vendor, allowing to review their security practices. If they get access to your network, if they're a contractor, 1099, whatever they are, if it's a Windows network, give them very limited permissions. You know exactly what they're going to be doing, what the scope is, and lock everything down. You want as much segmentation and zero trust as possible. You want the least amount of permissions possible for them to do the thing that you wanted them to do in an isolated network, separate from everything else.
Is that not the problem?
Just like you would have like a production and non-production environments, and you'd have sandboxes and all these other different development places. You keep the contractors like kindergartners. You don't turn your back on them for too long. You keep them in a room. You make sure they haven't died, but you supervise.
Yeah. I have a child who's 18 months old, and I'm just realizing that between 0 and I guess to 2,
you got there's no buffer time. You can't off of. They're putting everything in their mouth, and like sometimes it's like they're just dude, you're gonna die.
Okay, so like you said, I certainly get the point. By the time the hack has happened, by the time the problem is caused, it really doesn't matter whose responsibility it is. We need to deal with it. So adopting that mindset of, look, okay, we assume we haven't been attacked today, but we will be at some point. Vetting everything that comes through the door. So for example, if you're going to install CRM system, often CRM systems, you don't just want them for sales, for example, you want them to integrate to every different department within the organization, be it marketing, be it finance, operations. So, but you inherently want all these different systems to communicate with each other as well. So how do you ensure that, I guess the more complexity it becomes, the easier it is to overlook problems, right?
Yes.
The more problems.
Simplify things as you can to don't outsmart yourself. You can build, you can try to attempt to build something super complicated, but you'll miss something. And if you miss a bolt or miss something, it's going to fall apart. So having very clear ideas of what roles are, and you can base permissions based on roles. So it's called role-based access.
Yeah.
You want to start at looking at your organization as a whole. You got your physical security, you got your network stuff, but you want to make sure you have an inventory. You want to know all your vendors. You want to know all of your contractors, all your full-time employees, executives, sales, marketing, and all the different permission levels. Put it on paper. Find out how far of a difference you have between what you actually have in a network design and administration to what this perfect scenario looks like. And then apply standards, whether it's Windows compliance security images, however, a baseline that you deploy workstations and laptops and things like that, or mobile device management, so everyone follows the same policy. So you don't have USB drives being allowed, for example, which is how Edward Snowden got everything out of the NSA, was USB drives.
Yeah.
That would have been solved if they had all had a policy that said no USB.
I think there's clearly an education piece that goes on with this as well, right? Because I worked in organizations before where, for example, they wouldn't allow us to put USBs in our devices, or they wouldn't allow us to bring our own devices. For example, we had to use company-issued Lenovo's rather than MacBooks, for example. And these, from an employee perspective, a lot of times these just seem like frustrations that, because they don't understand the reason behind it. So how can a company educate its employees in a way that so that they get to the point where they actually understand the ramifications of doing what seemed like harmless things, downloading a file or watching a movie on their the computer issue, the company issued desktop, right? What are the kind of things I mean, are these the kind of problems that you come across? Are these the kind of consulting engagements that you're involved with companies?
Yeah, sometimes it's training, phishing, anti-phishing, like bringing people up to speed on all the different types of tech attacks that they're going to see. And you're going to be busy. You're going to be sitting at your desk for your normal workday, and you're going to get tons of email, and you're going to try and get rid of them and mark them all down. You feel accomplished, but you clicked on a link.
Yeah.
Now, if the next page is a login screen, it could look amazing. It could look just like what you're used to, but it's a trick.
Cool.
I got a phone call today. This is your electric service provider. We have a disconnection notice for you in the next 30 to 45 days unless your account is resolved. Press 1 to be connected to the billing department. But they didn't mention any name of, and I checked my account, I paid up. It's the urgency, the false urgency. Your son has been kidnapped. He's in Mexico. We have him here. He's in jail. If you pay us off in the next 15 minutes, we'll let him out. Yeah. No, you can't speak to him. 15 minutes, Bitcoin. And some people pay it. Meanwhile, your son is at home playing Xbox. He's not in Mexico. He's fine, but you won't check because you think he's in jail. And there's enough people that fall for it. So the urgency plus the convenience factor that they provided you with this helpful link, it's not helpful. Beware, what is it? Beware the Romans even when they're bearing gifts? Is that an old saying, or is it the Greeks? Doesn't matter.
Well, someone will be offended if you get that wrong.
Well, the Romans will be. They're gone, and the Greeks, they're hard to offend.
No, I think it's a good point, right? But I guess if you have all these protocols and processes in place, then if such a phone call happens, you're not going to respond in a way that the attacker wants you to, because you have security knowing that, well, no, this is actually impossible. They can't have taken my son, or can't have taken my program, because it's all locked up.
And you want to report those kinds of things rather than assuming, like, you want to make sure you've created an environment where your employees don't feel scared to report stuff to you, because it could be a part of a targeted attack. There's a report today, Ars Technica, saying North Korea is targeting security researchers, pretending to be other security researchers and showing them new exploits to try and get access to more. And they're fake exploits. So they're being really clever. But if people didn't actually raise the red flag that this is happening, we wouldn't have known that this many people have had the same experience. So if all of your executives are getting hammered with text message spam and email spam, we can fix that. We can adjust security protocols, but if you don't say anything because you're afraid that you're going to get in trouble, if you clicked on a link, okay, we all have. I got so many viruses when I was a kid by clicking on everything, because I thought everything, ooh, free stuff, free iPad, whatever it is. Not when I was a kid, but when the internet came up, it was just, oh, whoops, shouldn't have done that. And that's how you learn. So no one's exempt. Everyone has made a stupid mistake. So we can take shame and judgment off the table and create an organization that allows for mistakes and training and keeping your job, because no one's immune from it.
So it's actually an interesting point you said. No one's immune from it, because if we talk again, specifically related to the SolarWinds attack, you read about the whole list of high-profile companies and government departments that were infiltrated by the hack. You'd be forgiven for thinking, I don't need to worry. My business doesn't compete on this scale, so that kind of threat is not applicable to me. But what would you say to someone who had that mindset now?
You might not be a target for North Korea or Russia or China. Fair enough. You might not be, but there's always someone on the adversarial totem pole that could do either damage with your equipment, using it as part of a botnet, using it as part of a jumping off point. There's a reason we don't hack back. when someone hacks us, because the first hop that we find is usually like a church or a mom and pop shop, because someone hacked them and used them as a jumping off point. There's nothing you can steal from a bakery online virtually. You can look at all the cupcakes, but you can't taste them, which is just torture. But you can use their computers on their network to send out spam as a jumping off point for VPNs, as a way to conceal your real location.
But then how would that, okay, let's take the point of that bakery as a jumping off point. So I run this bakery. So how does this, why would I care about that, really? If this is in effect, you might be using my company as a jumping off point, fine, but then how does this affect me? It doesn't sound like it's affecting me.
Okay, now you have ransomware. And all of your computers and your point of sale and your accounting software in the back room, all gone. And you got to file your taxes and you got to pay your employees, but you don't have access to any of your stuff because it's all ransomed. Now you have to pay, or you don't if you didn't have your backups. But if you're a small company, I'm betting half of you don't even know if your backups are going every day, and most of you don't have a proper backup setup. I don't know what happened. I remember the 90s when everyone backed up their stuff like it was this big anxiety. Everyone had zip disks, and it was just save and back up, and you don't want to lose stuff. Now everyone, it's like they forgot. Change your oil in your car; it won't work. It's one of the basics.
Would you think it's become a bit complacent? Because I was talking to principal security architect at AWS a couple of months ago, and she was saying that one of the key differentiators of cloud is security. All right. So if we're transitioning businesses to cloud every day of the week, right? Is this making us complacent? Are we just by virtue of being on the cloud, are we more secure?
It depends. It's like wearing armor around your waist. Maybe that part is more secure, but your head still doesn't have anything on it. You still have your home, you have your regular office where you interact, you have workstations, and your people are usually the weakest link anyways. So you could have cloud, and we still don't have a good way to determine intention. So if I'm accessing my machine right here and I download a virus or a Trojan that allows somebody to use my machine pretending to be me, that's a problem, because now it looks like me, they've spoofed my identity, the location, everything looks fine, but it's not me. And they don't, like, who's to say I'm not trying to withdraw money? Who's to say I'm not trying to download files that are mine?
Have you ever heard of instances where people are almost hacking themselves to give themselves an excuse to partake in illegal activity? So, for example, Bryan Seely, you wouldn't hack into a bank, let's say, to wire transfer some money on your too obvious. But if you pretended to hack into yourself as someone else doing it, benefit from that withdrawal, could you do that? Do people do that? Or is that just a ridiculous suggestion?
Oh, it would be. There's not a lot of scenarios where I think it would be profitable. Most of the attacks are, I mean, I guess you could download ransomware, but chances are if you're pulling off something like that, you're going to make a mistake. They're going to figure out where it came in, and you're going to be sitting there with your coffee going, oh, it wasn't me. We got you, and then you're going to jail.
Okay, so let's bring it back to this. Let's bring it back to the SolarWinds attack for a moment. So something on this go, right? So this first came, I think FireEye were the ones that first discovered it back in December last year. And there've been a few different news streams on this particular article saying, okay, this has been going on since September. You mentioned earlier on maybe March, a year. Is it even possible to know how long this, well, we say how long the hack has been going on, but what do we mean by the hack has been going on? Is it sleeper ransomware that's only just woken up, or has it been active all this time?
Well, sleeper ransomware isn't what broke in.
Okay.
Someone downloaded something a Trojan, someone broke in through one means or another. It wasn't an automated, this was a targeted thing to SolarWinds by very sophisticated people who knew how to inject malicious code into a software development lifecycle without getting caught, hide it, so it rolls out and it works. I know professional good guys who can't write code that works the first time and works like perfectly. You got to retest it and trial and error, and you spend all day beating your head against the wall. This isn't an amateur thing. So how long, it doesn't really matter, but people want to know. Because you want to be able to figure out who made a mistake and how we can correct it.
Yeah. So what is the defender's role here? Because the defender's role should have been the one to, I guess, identify it in the first place, right?
In this particular one, it was the architecture that really caused all the problems. You turning off antivirus for certain folders, having access to all these different networks, had too much access, too high level of permissions, and then no one thought to look there, I guess. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. It's more complex than like the Titanic, where it's bad design plus iceberg plus dark plus 1910 or 12 or whatever it was, and that's it. Like, and then the boat sunk. This was 7, 8, 9, 10 things, and it's hard to point fingers, but who downloaded the initial, who allowed this to happen? What was the thing that failed that allowed them in the first place? And then if they can trace the timeline back, they can start to address, all right, who worked here, who's in charge, where do we look for the logs, that kind of thing.
But one thing I think it seems abundantly clear to you, at least, is that this is not an individual hacker. This is a pretty sophisticated organization, government body, maybe that's orchestrated this, right?
Going by experience, just judging what they accomplished, it wasn't easy.
Yeah. And
stayed hidden for a relatively long amount of time. They designed things to stay that way. The ransomware is more sophisticated, and all the research suggests it's Dark Halo or UNC 2452, and they say they're attributing it to Russia. This is what it's on FireEye and various other places.
Yeah. So, given the time that this attack occurred, 2020, as you said, a year that many of us would like to forget or move past, at least as quickly as possible.
Hey, you don't live here.
Yeah, there's a reason for that. I mean, did the pandemic period have anything to do with this? Did it make the problem easier, harder? Because obviously we've seen, because the thing that came out again and again and again throughout 2020, this was before perhaps this attack even surfaced, was that there's a lot of emphasis on cybersecurity because of everybody now working at home, reconfiguration of offices, environments, this kind of stuff. I
think this was planned long in advance, and there's evidence to suggest 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years.
Wow.
So that it had way prior to the pandemic even existing, way before the dude kissed the monkey, and then we all got sick. Whatever it was, bat, monkey, pangolin, or whatever. Who cares? We're sick. It's over. Yeah, way in advance. That has nothing to do with why it spread, why it was effective. It's just part of and obviously 10 years prior, this wasn't ransomware, but maybe they had access for a long time and doing different things, and this could have evolved. But there's DNS record.
Yeah, the question, if it's been going on for so many years, then like you say, if you started 5 years ago, by the time today arrives, you would assume that you could defend against anything that was created 5 years ago. But as you said, the methods of attack and what have you evolved as well, right?
Yeah, it's true.
So what does this mean for you then as a consultant? Have you seen more interest in your services because of this attack? Does this promote people like yourself?
Yeah, from definitely companies that are proactive rather than reactive. So there's usually two schools of thought.
Hmm.
People who don't want to address reality, which is assume that you're going to get breached. You're not as good as everyone who's on the bad side of the spectrum, and you might not think you have anything valuable, but they don't know that, and you have valuable. Your information's valuable, your time. They know what your. They don't give a crap about your bakery or your accounting firm, but you do, and they know you'll pay to get it back. That at minimum, it's the fastest way to get money for them. And it works a lot. I've had to handle plenty of ransomware facilitation exchanges, and they don't want a bad reputation. I get the irony. The ransomware guys want you to pay so that you can say, yes, they gave me the way to decrypt it when I paid them promptly. 5-star review, assholes. Like, the criminal wants a good reputation for at least being honest after he locked all your stuff. So
is that typically what they do? They give you the code to decrypt it rather than
they give you a program to decrypt everything.
Yeah. Okay. Isn't that in itself kind of giving up their special sauce? Is that not?
No, it's one unique encryption key for you, and the decryption key is for you only. And it doesn't. People have found a way to decrypt lots of different variations of ransomware, so you can always check based on the email address that you have to email, or the extension, or the name of the files after they get all crap renamed and everything. You can check online to see if there's a solution to solve it without having to pay. If it's a new variant, you're going to have to pay, or you're going to have to wait.
Yeah. Okay, got it. So just quickly, guys, if any of you listening today, if you have any questions or insights, please just pop them in the chat box. I'm more than happy to read them out to Brian as we go. But Brian, I just want to bring you back to something you mentioned earlier on about, what we can now do moving forward. Assume that we are always under attack, perhaps. What does a supply chain cybersecurity strategy look like? And is this different to any other cybersecurity strategy that we would have in place already?
It's fairly similar to a risk management strategy in terms of if you work with banks or you work with lots of law firms, they have a lot of compliance requirements. So ISO and PCI and these types of things, and they require that they check their vendors' security out. And so they require that they meet a checklist of requirements that they use intrusion detection, antivirus, two-factor authentication, that kind of thing. Because if you don't, you're a liability.
Yeah.
So it's doing a background check on a potential girlfriend or a boyfriend, but it goes over better. It's more acceptable to review your vendors, and it's stuff that you can put in a contract and make sure that people stick to the schedule. Enterprise companies do this all the time. It's very common. Not doing it would be negligent.
Yeah.
Having a consultant like myself or someone else to be able to tell you what you need to do to fix and bring things up to spec is always a good idea. Always having a pen tester or somebody to do a security audit. Sometimes you fish your employees and you test whether they're going to click on a link and find out how many people clicked on the link. And you go, okay, 75% of your employees clicked on the link after we gave them that class on not clicking links. Half of those people were executives. Were you not paying attention? But they wanted to click the link because they got an emotional connection to the email. Sexual harassment alleged at ABC Corp. Executive in the C-level suite accused of sleeping with underage girl. Click here to read more.
Yeah.
That's going to burn a hole in the back of your skull, not wanting to click it. Like, you want to click it, you want to know what's going on. It's gossip, it's about your company, it can mean your livelihood. It's a trap. If you have to verify it, just Google search stuff. If Amazon or iCloud or something's sending you hey, your iCloud account was hacked, they're sending that to everybody, whether or not you have an iCloud account or not. hoping that someone clicks, and some people do.
So you mentioned it on a webinar just a couple of days ago. I think the analogy you gave was that hackers don't knock on every door in order around the country. They can literally knock every door of every house every second.
All the time.
Yeah. So and it literally is ongoing. So there's no respite. You have to have a strategy in place for dealing with this, but preempting these.
And not only can they knock on every door, they can actually inspect every manufacturer of every device. They can tell you how many machines run Linux, which ones are running Apache version what, which ones are vulnerable to this type of exploit. So they can cherry pick. You can use Shodan. It's an easy hardware software search engine that'll just tell you who's running what.
Yeah.
These are running Oracle, these are running Web, Microsoft, these are running Linux. It's just nonsense.
It sounds like the perfect lead generation tool. Just telling everyone who's vulnerable.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. Lead
not least, obviously, I work in recruitment. It's a very different business, but okay, that's super interesting. Okay, so what would you say is the key learning for companies now coming out of this? Not coming out of this. This may go on now for a few years, I hear. But what are the things that you're seeing, I guess, from a mindset shift in the people that you're now interacting with?
The amount of stuff that you need to learn to be able to properly do all this stuff on a regular basis is more than anybody's going to want to learn. It's going to take a long time. And to know what you're looking for. It's more than what a plumber would know walking into your house. It's more than an electrician. And if you would bet your child's life that someone couldn't break into your stuff, if you have no computers, you can just ignore the rest of this webinar. But if you have computers and you are not supremely confident that you have everything dialed in, you wouldn't be on this webinar. I'm not that entertaining. I'm a little entertaining, but I'm not that worth. People don't pay to watch me in Vegas. I'm not a Vegas act yet.
Yeah. Watch this space.
That being said, get an expert and make sure that you have all your T's crossed, I's dotted, or whatever language crosses and dots.
At what stage you do this? Is this something in this kind of pen testing and security audit? Is this something you do ad hoc? Is it something you do every month? How often should this?
Most companies should at least do it every year at minimum, but that's bare minimum, especially if you're a larger company, if you have multiple sites and multiple locations, anything with over 500 employees, oh my goodness, multiple times a year, at least every quarter.
Yeah. And then how long
if you're under 100 people twice a year, maybe more, depending on the type of company you have. If you're more data, if you're a tech company, you have software and cloud stuff, apps, you have app pen testing, you have hardware, physical security, you have human training. Most companies have to do some form of phishing training or some security training based on the industry they're in. So there's always the need for people like me.
Special ops.
Yeah, unless you need me to stand out in the sun for long periods of time, I am not that guy. I will burn so fast it will make your head spin. My kids are so white they get sunburned opening up the refrigerator.
My friend used to make fun of me getting moonburn in the evening. If there was a full moon, I don't turn into a wolf, but I still get burnt.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me what's next then, Brian. We move into 2021. There's still this heightened activity around the pandemic, about people having to increase their just knowledge base regarding cybersecurity, right? What do you see as the key things now that are going to change this year? Maybe as a result of the SolarWinds attack, but maybe it's different.
Because everyone got stuck inside, hackers and the bad people, even whatever, depending on the country you're in, all had to stay at home too. So they got better at finding new ways to trick you. So you probably see an increase in scams on dating sites. People will pretend to be a woman. You can go and actually, like the dark web, you can go and buy collections of videos and pictures of one
Mhm.
girl or guy and pretend to be that person to then try to sell services or get money.
Wow.
And people call me all the time, hey, do you have a way to get money back if I sent money to somebody? Why'd you send money to somebody? Well, I didn't. Like, dude, what'd you do? Where'd you send money? Don't
Yeah.
send anyone any money. From if you meet them on a dating site, if money comes up, it's a scam.
Mm.
It is. If they are stuck on the side of the road and they can't prove it, if you can't FaceTime verify somebody, if they're texting you or they're emailing you, they can FaceTime you. You can
Yeah.
verify what's going on. If they
Mhm.
can't do that, they're not willing to do that, not willing to get on the phone, it's a scam. Those are some of the basics.
Yeah.
People are going to come after your money. It's easier than working in some cases for
Mm.
them.
Interesting. They're going to need to
The more educated we all get, the less attractive that will be, and they'll have to get better and do other stuff,
Yeah.
like maybe get a job.
But why is, but again, why is this? Why is cybersecurity increased so much just because people are at home? What is the increased risk? What is the increased
Because we have
opportunity?
nothing to do. I can't go
Yeah.
out and do anything. I can't take my kids to the gym. I can't go play, go to the movies. I'm stuck here with my children.
Yeah.
They're on their phones, or they're up in bed right now. But there's nothing to do. I have a gym, but I can only work out for so long, and I'm at my computer. So if I was a
Yeah.
bad guy and frustrated, I'd be trying to mess with as many people as possible. And it's a problem. It's a puzzle. Forgetting the morality of it, it's a challenge. And you want to
Yeah.
improve, you want to get better. And then the high score is your bank account.
Hmm. Yeah. True enough. So what is it? So obviously, client engagements to one side a second. What are there still ethical hacking instances that you partake in? Be it well, I'm not asking you to tell me whether you're trying to hack into the Pentagon or anything, but I mean, are there still ways that you kind of obviously hacking into the Secret Service, for example, is kind of you'd assume to be one of the hardest things to do. But are there ways to test your ability so that you're constantly evolving and then
Yeah,
enable?
there's all sorts of new types of hacks and things that are kind of popping up. You can practice pen testing and stuff on your own, whether you have virtual machines and you set up a Linux box and a Windows box and a Mac box, and setting all that up is like setting up dominoes to try and build this intricate thing to figure out. And it would be very similar to like I have lock picking equipment, and that's like a hobby.
My wife bought me lock picking equipment a few years ago. What's actually quite funny is that when I told my brother that I had this lock pick, so I just have a 21-piece lock picking kit, right?
Yeah.
When I told my brother who's in the Navy, his response was, "Yeah, I've got one too, but he's got like a 45-piece lock picking kit."
Yeah, I probably have 10 or 15 different locks. Some of them are real, some of them are clear to show my kids. And then, 30 or 40 pieces, but I only use like 3 of them. And some of them some real locks open way faster than you'd expect with no training whatsoever. And it's like, oh, that's just sad. And then when you're waiting for stuff to load, you figure out puzzles and you're like, all right, now I want to learn how to solve this. So I learn how to solve it, and then I want to learn to solve it a different way. And then when I was getting tattoo work, I learned how to solve it with one hand. And then it was because I was getting new tattoo work done. So you're like on a spaceship to Mars for a year in a room, and you have everything in that room. It's going to get boring. You have to get creative. You can only watch Mr. Robot so many times.
And this is why, like you said, so this is why there's so much opportunity for people to hone their craft and get better.
Yeah. So if any company is operating 2021 and hasn't done pen testing, hasn't had a cybersecurity plan, disaster recovery plan, and had all those things looked up, it's like a dentist visit or a doctor's visit, or even more important for your company. It's going to make or break you. If you get hit anything more than just some dumb kid, anything more than that, you're going to you won't recover.
Yeah. So what is the closing advice then for companies out there that listen now? who don't perhaps have, they've seen everything in the news over the last year about heightened risk of cybersecurity. They've seen the SolarWinds incident unfold in front of them, but they still haven't done anything about it at their company level. What are the three things you would say a company needs to do today in order to safeguard themselves moving forward?
Simulate, well, have a realistic, accurate survey of your network, audit of your network, firewalls, equipment, how many things you have connected, how many users, get rid of old users, that kind of thing. Have a full audit done. Have a third party take an audit, because you always want someone else to check your work.
Yeah.
Third party audit everything, as well as attempt and pen test.
Mm-hmm.
And then once that happens, either fix it, make actionable fixes to all their recommendations yourself, or pay someone to do it. Usually the pen tester, like in my case, I'm going to a gun shop. I have a client who's a large gun range and huge client. No, he's not huge, but he's very slim, but the company's big. And securing his company and making sure, because they have IDs for people who are getting background checks, and they also have lots of guns. Yeah. So securing physically as well as digitally, and making sure that people aren't making stupid mistakes. I'm going to do a full audit and pen test, as well as fix anything that comes up to make sure that everything on the checklist that I find gets fixed, because they don't have an internal security person. It's usually like, oh, my nephew, he comes by and adds a printer when we need it. Yeah. Some companies will benefit for having like a virtual CISO, like a chief information security officer, or somebody who's like not a full-time employee, but somebody who's on contract, certain amount of hours a month. You get a better rate for having them on a longer term. So if I was to charge somebody my hourly rate, they'd get a big discount for having me on a monthly basis. They'd get a certain amount of hours, whatever they seem to need. Kind of go from there.
Yeah. Okay. So third-party audit, pen testing, and then action and fixes that have been recommended by whoever you've employed. Then the ongoing situation would be, like I said, if you're too big to employ someone on your books, then maybe have a contracted CISO, or someone who can just continue to advise if your business evolves and your headcount increases, right?
If you get sick, the first person you go see is the person who knows the most about things being sick.
Yeah.
It's the doctor. Your computers need that same level of maintenance to avoid getting cancer, as well as what happens if you get cancer. You're not going to just hope the cancer goes away. Maybe I'll get more cigarettes. That'll fix it.
Unfortunately, there are many people who are, it's just putting your head in the sand. And there's many different ways you can explain it, but yeah, I think there are a lot of people that have that mindset. Okay, so just finally,
a lot of them live in my country.
You've got to touch on this before. You mentioned zero trust, but I just want to, before we close, just explain, just perhaps in a bit more detail, what role does zero trust play in all of this?
Think of it like you only want is the least amount of privileges possible, and you don't just assume. It's the difference between like whitelisting and blacklisting. Blacklisting is everything's okay until you've said no. So right now on your phone is blacklisting mode, essentially. So all phone numbers can call you until you block one or two. Whitelisting is all numbers by default are blocked until you open up and say, yes, this number's okay. And then they can call you. But otherwise, no one can call you. Segmenting your network in a zero trust model, saying, okay, these computers can communicate, but only on these protocols, only on these things. When you get a router from Best Buy, all ports open out. Most ports open in are blocked, but everything on the way out, you would meticulously figure out what needs to access outside the network, so it couldn't call home to a command and control server. You'd be blocking stuff inward, outbound, and laterally, keeping things as compartmentalized as possible. Unlike the Titanic, which had the whole water going over the tops of the stupid walls, airtight. You have to put a lid on the box. Are you kidding me? Like, first thing, like, what engineer designed that? Just blows my mind. It's his fault. Also, the guy who hit the iceberg, but mostly the guy who said you could hit an iceberg and you'd be fine.
You'd be fine. Yeah, exactly.
Bring the horse in.
Look, I think that's been. I think that's all we have time for today, Brian. I thoroughly enjoyed having you on the show. I think there's lots more we can discuss, but I wanted to try and keep it as on point as possible. Is there anything else that you want to quickly cover?
Are you saying I get off point?
No. The point is just big.
I've lots to say. I've been alone in this room for so long.
No, we're not finishing there. We're staying on for another hour. Okay, let's keep it to you a moment. What kisses you want to talk about yourself, obviously? What have you learned during this period?
I like people a lot more than I thought I did. I mean, I always liked people. I like the interactions and I like the dynamics. I like tech, but I like how people use it. I like being able to understand the motivations and how to improve using computers as a way to improve human lives and using technology to be able to solve human challenges. I've had it in my personal life where technology's been a help in some really important things. And it's also provided a unique opportunity to get phone calls from people who need help and they don't know where to turn. And it's a way to meet new people, and I get to travel. I got to meet, last I saw you was in Dubai. And I love traveling and learning new languages. And it's like, ooh, cool. What's that? I want to eat that. Like, that looks delicious. Hey, wow, that's a cool hat. Like, it's wherever I go, I just want to meet. I'm like a golden retriever puppy who's just happy to see everybody. I love learning about, it's like everything's neat. And if you're sitting around in the same place, it's boring. This is a way to kind of connect with people. And you can actually, I found out that you can actually connect fairly well with phone or webinar and make connections with people more so than I thought at the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's a practiced skill. You have to be a little more animated and give a shit. It's hard to fake giving a crap, but if you can actually be enthusiastic, it comes across as genuine. I think that's why my career in speaking has actually come as far as it has, because lots of people in my line of work are very anti-people. Yeah,
I think that's the right word, introverted, you could say. But no, you're quite right. It's typically what you find, though, people who are very kind of tech focused. It's not to say everyone is like that, of course. But no, you're absolutely right. Someone who chooses to spend their life in front of a computer is inherently more interested in computers than people. And therefore would, for example, my wife's younger brother, he's loving the pandemic because he's a computer geek. And he's like, I don't have to talk to anyone. It's great. I can just do my thing on the computer.
My daughter is 12. She types at 65 words a minute and is much more of a natural on this stuff than I was at that age. And I was pretty clueless on like how to talk to girls. I mean, still am, but the kids are growing up with this stuff. She's got friends all over the country playing Minecraft and all these and Animal Crossing, and she's not begging to get out of the house at all. She hasn't said one thing about it, like doesn't care.
Yeah.
Just happy as shit, watching Friends and wearing pajamas.
So if you can have schools like this and people in different parts of the world, it's like even my relationships with my family have got better over the last year because I'm seeing them more, even though we live in different countries. It's ridiculous. Why do we have to wait for the pandemic for this to happen?
It's my relationship with my kids is at its best sweet spot when I travel, because then I can miss them. And if I can and then I miss them and I come home and then it's like, oh, I love you. And then I get to travel more. So it's a nice balance. So when you're around the same people over and over and over again, it does get a little frustrating, but I've got good kids and it's just me and the two kids. So I don't have anyone like second guessing or micromanaging. We just do what we want.
Sounds awesome.
It's not too bad.
Excellent. Listen, Brian, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Hopefully we'll get to speak to you again at some point soon if you come back to Dubai.
And I hope to be back in Dubai at least once or twice this year. I'll be in Saudi in September for sure.
Will you be over in Dubai for anything during the expo later this year? So things runs from October to March. Is there anything you're involved in then?
Possibly. They're not able. They have a policy for GITEX to not pay. You don't. They can't have the same speaker on 2 years in a row or ever return, so they won't pay somebody for that. But I have a couple other conferences that were interested, and other people from business perspectives, and made a lot of really interesting and cool contacts out there. I love Dubai. I would relocate there in a second. It's
well, we'd have you happily.
Inshallah.